Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Southampton, part of the Global Sports Podcast Network. My name is Greg Elliott, and as always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Zach Ingo Finch. How you doing, Zach? You recovered from, time of recording, last night's disappointment?
Not entirely. You could tell by my mania yesterday, maybe how I was feeling. You can tell by the fact that Greg is hosting the podcast to add some level of structure to it. That maybe my brain chemistry isn't at a place that can fully host a podcast without going on incessant rambles for another 10, 20 minutes at a time. But we go again, probably to lose again.
Not long between matches this week as we head into our bonus episode where we preview this upcoming game against Forest. And, Forest are flying high at the moment. Currently sitting sort of second in the table or third, same level on points, just behind Arsenal, in fact. And drew against Liverpool on was it Tuesday? Football in the week's really thrown me off. I don't even know what day it is. It's like Christmas all over again. But they're on an incredible run of form, and they look like a really dangerous team. And our form isn't great. So, is it time that we flip the story? Is there someone else to give up our streak?
I feel like we ruined the quadruple's chances for Man City. It would be very, very, very Southampton of us to get a win against a team that probably most other people would like to see win. Maybe, to see one of those fairy tales happen again. Fairy tales at the beginning of this season in a separate podcast separate episode of our podcast when we talked about sort of, you'll never see another Leicester City again. Potentially we may end up with another Leicester City again. It would be very telling for us to ruin that, just upset everybody and ruin everyone's day, right? However, the flip side of that is we seem to just lose every game now by 3 or 4 goals. And your big fears around them being a counter-attacking team and us being torn apart yesterday, but with no end product when they have strikers that are in the form of their life. Yeah, it's a scary one. I would, though, Greg, like to see us win and Soleimana to get a winning goal, because then I will lose a bet to another podcast, which is the Saints Network, where I've made a maybe silly decision that Soleimana, if Soleimana scores in a game that Saints win, I have to purchase a shirt with his name on the back. But also, judging from my conversations with you, you consider that to be
I think that's almost a safe bet, Zach, as Flynn Downs to get booked every single time he plays. It is... Look, the problem is that even as the optimist on this show, for that bet to come in, we'd have to A, win a game, and B, have Soleimana score the winning goal.
You're right. That is it's kind of nuts, and especially where our record against Forest literally since 2012. So since 2012 was we played them last in the first time we played them since 2012. Was in January 2023, and since we've played them in the last 3 games, we've lost all those games. So
we've got no draws against them either, and you know that I love the little AI summary.
Let's hear it, mate. Let's hear it. Let's go.
I've actually got a lengthy AI summary, which I'm not going to read all of the way through, but just to basically summarize it. It says, don't bet on over 3.5 goals. Don't bet on Southampton, and don't bet on both teams to score. So you can put it there.
Right. Exciting. How thrilling. I mean, if you're looking at the last 3 games, that's
3-0.
Yeah, well, that again, the last 3 meetings we've had between them was a 1-0 loss, a 4-3 loss, and a 1-0 loss. They're all losses. But in that specifically, you're right. The only 33% of the time in our last 3 meetings have we scored a goal. So I guess if it's using really basic maths in the background of that AI, makes a lot of sense as to why it thinks that. But it's just just dire straits me, innit? Like, again, at this point, it's just like we have to laugh at ourselves because if not, we cry. I know I upset some Spurs fans on TikTok by comparing our recent accolades to their trophy cabinet, which, we're poking fun at ourselves, guys. Like, we have nothing. We're grasping at straws here. Like, you came to our own yard and beat us 5-0. Like, don't kick us while we're down.
Yeah, look, it's going to be a tough game, but it is also the sort of game that I could potentially see. We talk a lot about being people's banana skins, but actually this is like the reverse of that for us, where we're going to go in with such low expectations that often we come out pleasantly surprised.
Greg, I've heard it all before, mate. I've heard it from you so many times this season. We are looking at one of probably the best informed clubs, we could come up against.
Yeah.
We had a good game for 80 minutes, right? We could have another good game for 80 minutes, and then Chris Wood scores a hat-trick. That is the fragility of our mental state. We might be without Dibbling. I know that he's getting his ankle assessed today. I don't know the outcome of that yet. I would love nothing more than us to win in a 7-goal thriller where we come out on top 4-3. But like, again, you even pointed out yesterday, mate, the only way that we scored was that Manchester United had to score for us. Like, how are we beating this team, man?
Maybe they just put 3 or 4 in the back of their own net and give it to us. I don't know. Look, we played well. Look, we played well for 82 minutes, and that is a foundation to build upon. We had opportunities and we had shots on goal. Although we had opportunities. We didn't make the most of them. But if we can start putting some of them away, maybe, just maybe, right?
Again, it's not that I don't want to believe you. I just don't want to fall in the trap of how I felt yesterday, which was so excited. And then got to half time, I was like, no way are we 1-0 up. This is insane. And then going into that second half, and it was on your edge, on the edge of your seat stuff. And then as the personnel were slowly rotated with personnel that seemed to not understand that we were winning a game against Manchester United, all hope dropped. And then we walked into a podcast where I didn't know how to feel, because we were like, wow, that was such a good game until it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I worried that I'd rather just go in feeling utterly hopeless and defeated until we move down into a league where maybe we can start getting some wins. Because who knows? Like, I don't want to say there is a lot of things going on in the background. We've been sort of linked with different potential directors of football. So that's quite nice to see that stuff progressing. But oh man, yesterday did some damage.
Yeah, it was definitely a tough way to lose a game, and we have seen just about all of them so far this season. So, okay, well, we're going to move into some predicted lineups and some predicted scores. But first, a message from our partners, Zencastr. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. Okay, mate, so Thursday, Sunday, not an easy transition. How do you see us lining up against Forest? Do you think that Juric, who seems very switched on tactically, has identified our openness to being caught on the break and Nottingham Forest's ability to break, and changing it up a bit from what we saw against United?
I would like to think so, but the big fear I have is the comments that he made where he expected so much more from the subs yesterday. And we're probably going to have to rotate just for fitness. And half our players look knackered after 60 minutes, give them 2 days off, and they're not going to be able to go back in and do a full 90. So, yeah, I wonder if we'll shut up shop, put Toolpaw up the top and hope for a bundled in goal, maybe, because that's the only thing I could see if he switched on enough that's but then I could also see him going, well, I'm not going to change what's worked really well and hope that they defend better.
But obviously I think we're going to be without Dibbling.
Probably, more than
At the time
likely.
of recording, all we've heard is that he's having his ankle assessed today. But, I mean, even if it's assessed to be a minor niggle, that's still probably not going to be ready for Sunday. So
Yeah. So yeah, like who do you replace him with? And obviously we kind of saw some changes around, and Smallbone came on for him, who didn't have the best game of his life. As we pointed out yesterday, first thing he did was pass it directly to a Manchester United player, which wasn't great. And I think that was probably more the fault of Jurek bringing somebody in that's been out for so long on a sub as a sub in a game where it was all about game management. So it'll be
I don't
interesting
know.
to
At the
see who
risk
takes
of
his place.
sounding like a stuck record every time we do a predicted lineup, is this finally the week that we see Toolpaw and Cameron Archer play together?
No, I just don't see it. No,
it's just never going to happen.
No, I just don't think. I think that the universe is aligned to never see that pairing, and I just don't think, considering how many other players have been put on the pitch over Cameron Archer, I don't really know what Jurek doesn't see in him to not give him that opportunity. And I know that a lot of fans are crying out for it. I don't know if it's that there must be something. There must be decisions being made, and for what reasons, right? It was the same thing with like Les, who I was all for sending back to Chelsea before Russ went, and now has sort of come into his own playing in a system that actually fits him. There's a couple of it's weird to predict these kind of things, but also like surely we're going to have to swap some people around. Maybe that would be the case, right? Because if he's not been on the pitch as much and he's had some time to recover, but also has match fitness from the rest of the season, surely he would be up there. Or are we just going to do a reverse of the substitutions the other day where like Armstrong goes up top and, I feel like Soleimana has still got enough in the tank to play that game as well. If he's that hungry and raring to go and is able to somehow, they're considering they're going to take him off the other day and left him on. And yes. It didn't do much afterwards, but he managed the full 90 minutes without really flagging as much as I'd say some of the others were. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up playing Sunday. And if he is now going to be a focal point for focus of both like our team and probably Forest, it would make sense that losing Dibbling, you would keep that focal point on there. But then I could also see us putting 10 men behind the ball and then put Toolpaw up the top and hope that he can somehow take on the entire Forest team. It's so difficult to predict stuff at the moment until we start to understand a little bit more about sort of a solid 11. And obviously people coming back from injury. I don't think Downs had the best game yesterday. No. I don't really know what's going on with him.
I mean, to be fair, he came onto the pitch where the team was a bit of a mishmash anyway. We had Smallbone sort of playing up front, and we've talked before about him and Big Les almost sort of tripping over each other. There was a period of the game where they were together and then they weren't. So I don't think it's, and he's just come back from injury. There's always going to be some sort of bedding in period. So
yeah, so that's what I mean. Is like, so who are we gonna swap out with? And like Aribo had a much better game yesterday, so I could see him not making a huge amount of drastic changes and then just maybe swapping out Dibbling for somebody else, or again, recognising the threat that Forest pose and then just deciding to chuck a bunch of men behind the ball. But I also don't think that is a way that he wants to really play. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one either way. I don't know if defence changes much. Are we ever going to see Jack Stevens in a Saint shirt again, do you reckon? Or is that
he's still injured. So is
he still injured? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he picked up an injury in training, and I think it was like a month or 6 weeks that he was due to be out for. So,
okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah, I guess speaking of defence, we probably won't see Armel Bella-Kotchap, who today has had a game for the under-21s. So
indeed, Wellington's playing that game as well. It says a lot to me that he was like, I'm going to come back into the team, I'm going to fight for the team, this, that, and the other. And then basically Jurek was like, no, he's not that good. And now, when he refused to play for the under-21s previously, he's now playing for the under-21s. Because I'm guessing he's realised.
For me, it's a very clear difference in management style between Russell Martin and Jurek. Because Russell Martin said, well, we don't force the players to do anything. If they want to play in the 21s, great. It's a good chance to build up fitness. If not, I'm not going to force anyone to do anything they want to do. Whereas Jurek has very clearly said, you need to show me you're good enough. And if you can't do that if you're not playing. So
yeah, and that there you go. And I think that answers a lot of the questions as to, why are we not giving him a chance? And like there's so much strange defense around him for a player we've not really seen play since our last relegation season. You know what? Other than that, sort of, he had that game against Cardiff where wasn't it 5-3 in the end? We conceded a lot of goals against a really bad Cardiff side. So yeah, it's weird that I understand why it's a talking point. It's a weird talking point. I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone by the end of the window. If he's gone, I won't lament him leaving. It will just be like, well, that's the end of that conversation. If he stays, puts in a shift, and then starts rotating in with our defence, sure. Like, I just don't think it's going to change the way that the world works. And I know that that's funny coming from the performances Soleimana has put in after the last two games. And he has put in some good performances, but it hasn't resulted in a huge amount of it's not resulted in our league table changing at all. No. Like it was Swansea he scored, but it needs to be in the league.
Yeah.
So I can buy that shirt.
Okay, so we're going to move on to some score predictions and how we see this game playing out. But first, a message from our partners at the Global Sports Podcast Network.
The Global Sports Podcast Network is changing the face of football podcasting with dedicated daily content for every Premier League team, women's football, fantasy football, and a daily Premier League wrap-up broadcasted in 5 different languages. This is your one-stop shop for your daily football fix. Find GSPN wherever you find your usual podcasts.
Okay, mate, I'm going to throw it over to you first as the pessimist of the podcast. How do you see it playing out?
If we're lining up similar to how we've lined up the other day, it will be 3-0 Forest with a Chris Wood hat-trick. If we line up in a much more defensive manner, shove Toolpaw up the top and chuck the ball to him whenever we want, we're still probably going to lose, but only by 1 goal. And that will somehow be considered to be progress or not. Genuinely can't see us getting past Forest. I'm really sorry. At the beginning of the season, maybe when we were still full of optimism, and we probably had, I think you already said that you had them down as a team we would do the double over. In the world we live in currently, absolutely not. But then there's also that little background part of me, Greg, that's like, you're right, maybe we'll just ruin everyone's good time and then Liverpool win the season by, a point, whereas Forest had just beaten little old Southampton. It wouldn't have been a problem. Because, that would make us the villain in an arc where our season has already been thoroughly depressing.
Yeah.
But yeah, 3-0 or 1-0 to Forest, depending entirely on our formation. Woo!
Right.
What about you, mate?
Zach, look, it's been a tricky ride, and I thought that maybe this would be the first time in the season I was going to predict a Saints loss, but I'm not feeling it. I think that we're going to win 3-1.
It's another magical feeling. A magical feeling from Greg where the universe and the stars will align and the planets will all centre around St Mary's or the Forest Ground. Everyone will be happy, and somehow,
I think it's going to be 3-1. I think that Armour's probably going to come in for Diblin. I think that he's going to get a goal. I think that we're going to see a Toolpaw goal, and then I think we're going to see a Harwood Bellis header from a corner, because it would be lovely to score ourselves from a corner. But I still don't think we'll keep a clean sheet. So I think we'll get caught on the break. So I think 3-1 win. That's what I'm going with. I'm feeling the disparity between our opinions. It's fine.
It's just every time, every week, every day, every time we get to this point where you're like, yeah, no, we're going to do it this time. And I'm like, but based on what? What evidence? What? And it's like the feeling that I get. I'm like, what is that feeling? Is it having like a shot of whiskey every time we do this podcast? Like, I'm genuinely, I'm glad. Don't get me wrong. It would be having having me and you all sat around a table, whatever, being absolutely miserable as sin every week in, week out would get depressing. But
I just feel like at this point, if I predicted a Saints loss, it's so out of character it would like acknowledge.
We'd probably win. That's what would happen.
I've been putting the jinx on it every week. It's entirely on me.
You'd be so broken completely and utterly that they would accidentally win, which would reignite that hope we talk about that kills us. And then we'd go into the next game thinking, oh my goodness gracious me, we got a win. We're doing better than Derby. We might even survive. And then we'll get back 5-0 again.
6-0 by Newcastle, yeah.
Isaac scoring 6 goals or something like that because, why not? I think either way, there will be a game of football that will take place on Sunday, and we will have a team there, and that team may or may not be something to have pride in at the end of it. Just at the moment,
it's a really tough. Right, Forest's home form is very good. Forest this season are very good. At the moment, they are absolutely flying. And so it's not an embarrassment to go to Forest and lose. It could be an embarrassment to go to Forest and get battered. So it really depends. But also, I don't want to see us stick 11 men behind the ball in an effort to not get battered. I want us to give it a go and get a game out of it and put ourselves in with a chance.
You're right, because at this point, what shame do we have left?
Yeah.
How is there any way more to embarrass us? Unless they beat the 9-0 and we lose 10-0. Like, that is the only thing that I can think where, like, at that point, I genuinely don't know how we could come back. But, yeah, for me, it's genuinely, like, I don't know how we could be embarrassed anymore. Like, that Spurs game, mate. Like 4-0 down in the first 25 minutes. Yeah. Everyone was scared it would be another 9-0. And then we praised the character of keeping it at 5-0. It's like, what on earth are you talking about? It's just it's the tweet that went out that was like, I can't remember the guy that did it, but it was like Southampton Football Club is just a cruel social experiment to see how much people will put up with. Very much feels like that week in, week out. But, there could always be the chance because this is football. I personally don't think that this will be the weekend for it. I'm unfortunately becoming more right than I have been wrong in recent times. Much prefer you to be right, mate. So I guess we'll see. And a game of football will be had. And that's pretty much all I can say from an optimistic standpoint.
There might be a small blessing that it's not on Sky, so we're going to have to scramble to find a way to watch it. Maybe that's not quite the optimistic note we normally like to end on, but look, I'm sticking with it. 3-1. Heard it here first. And that just about brings us to all we've got time for. That's the note of optimism we love to end on.
Delusion.
Zach, as always, thank you for joining me. Thank you very much for listening. We will be back on Monday, come what may, with another episode of some description. Hopefully a positive one off the back of a 3-1 win. Hopefully a 3-1 win where Zach has to buy a Soleimana shirt would be fantastic.
I'm down for it. I've already agreed. Tweet's been bookmarked, bet's been made.
We look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for joining us.
Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.